this particular topic is very close to heart. It is something like how do we believe or how much do we have trust in our own scriptures. We know we have a plethora of scripture. We know we have in this huge ocean of scriptures many life-giving and life-managing skills. But at the same time, do we realize how much can we trust on these scriptures? Whenever it comes on the generic statements, we are very happy to make that yes, our scriptures are very rich. They have the narratives of these sciences, these particular types of applications. We know that. But then when it comes to the pramanas, when we come to where is it exactly, then we stand mum, and there is the problem of trust. How far can we trust? So let us begin from here only, that what is that which doesn't allow us to reach to our scriptures in almost all the problems when we have to manage our life. So the first problem I can see is the trust, and the trust is that we can't prove what we are saying. When we say this, the Western sciences, they believe only the pratyaksh praman, what is seen or perceived by the five senses. So if it is proven by either of the senses, we say yes, it is like proved, and now we can establish this fact, and that's why these scriptures which have already established certain types of knowledge systems, we trust on them. The other, we just club them and put them in the category of religious scriptures. Now, Gita is also a religious scripture, Mahabharata is also a religious scripture, everything. We just put Ramayana is also a religious scripture. So what we are doing is, we are putting the religious scriptures out of the formal spaces. It remains to our spiritual space, and then whenever we need some solution or some guidance, we look towards the Western theories, Western applications, Western sciences, and we forget at that part that we have our own systems of sciences. When we say we have our own systems of sciences, how do we prove it? To prove the whole system, we need certain, we say pramanas again. So let me start with this pramana only. Our whole system, which is mentioned in the scripture, is absolute scientific. Even the arts, the perception of arts or the theories of art, they are also very, very scientific. Nothing is left alone. So we don't have segregated fields. For example, we run a college called Arts and Commerce. That means arts is one faculty and commerce is one faculty. But our Indian scriptures don't deal life in this segmented manner. They say no, it's a composite system. Total arts is never been able to accomplish if there is no support of medical sciences, engineering, astronomy. So formal or informal spaces, we have the base of sciences in the scriptures. We have types of pramanas. Now when we say types of pramanas, the Western science say only pratyaksh praman, but Indians go beyond that, and I prove that with the examples. So pratyaksh is one, but the another is upman. Upman is comparison. When you take two samples, suppose we have to take out an example that who is richer, so we collect the samples from those who have money and those who don't have money, and after comparing them we come to the conclusion that those who have money are called rich. So it's called upman, that is with the comparisons or analogies. Then the third is arthapatti, that is derivations from the circumstances. Then we have anuplabdhi, that is non-perception or the negative proof. When we have too many negative proof, then also we can come down to one positive conclusion. Then we also have Shabd Praman. Shabd Praman means normally we have trust only what is written, but then what is spoken and given as word also has a praman that can be quoted, that can be cited, that cannot be reversed in any circumstances. And that is why we have a saying, pran jai par vachan na jai. Vachan is the shabd. Then we have anuman. Now this is immense. Even anuman is a praman, because if we don't have an anuman, how the hypothesis would be developed out of the research procedure. And then the last is atiti praman. Atit is from atit, that is the past, and that means history. So history can also become praman. If we trust that these are the things that are proven by the scriptures, then only we would reach to scriptures without having doubts in the minds. Otherwise, we'll keep on having so many doubts. I whenever interact on Mahabharata, they have one set of questions. If I dealt with Ramayana, they have another set of questions. If we deal with Gita, they have third type of questions. So why not we take up these as the questions and then see how much they can guide us in our lives. So I would start with a particular shlok from Gita. Gita in the 18th chapter has a wonderful shlok which tells us that what are the 5 conditions which would ensure 100% success. The shloka says, Adhishthanam tatha karta karanam cha prathak vidam vividhascht prathak cheshta daivam chaivatru panchamam. 5 things. One is Adhishthan. Adhishthan is the body. Body doesn't mean the human body only. Adhishthan is also called with the places we work. So institutions, the organizations, they are also the living entity. So a person, in which entity the person is working, in which body the person is working is one thing which would ascertain the success. The second is Karta. Who is the doer? Whether the doer is the right person to do that job. Are we not cross-posting the jobs to each other? So Adhishthanam, Karta, Karanam. The third thing is Karanam. Karanam are the tools through which we have the freedom to work. Karan is Upkaran, word comes from Karan only, that is the tools. So we have mind as a tool, thought as a tool, the body as a tool, Bahya Karan, Antah Karan, we would come on that slightly later. But Adhishthanam, Karta, Karanam, Karanam is the tool. Then the fourth tool is Prathak Vidam, Prathak Cheshta. We don't employ only one monotonous way to work. The action cannot be carried out with only one type of action. It must be added or embedded with different types of efforts. So Prathak Cheshtayam, Vivid Cheshtayam, with them we have to employ different vidhi and all. So 4 reasons are Adhishthan, Karta, Karanam, multiple uses of the modes, and the 5th is Daivam, that is fate. Now what we do is either we take the onus of everything on us, whether it is a success or the failure, we say we are the reasons, or we just transfer everything onto the fate and we say, oh, it was not in our fate. But Krishna was very clear in giving 20% to each reason and would say that fate is only 20%. The body where we are working is 20%. 20% is the person who is doing the job. 20% are the tools we adopt to do the job, and rest 20% is left to those modus operandi or the tools in how many varieties, what combinations, what multiple usages of knowledge that we have, we use it while doing our work. So whenever we want to have a success mantra, this is very easy. If we are not becoming successful, this is the touchstone, this is the yardstone. We have to analyze what is going wrong. Is the place of work is not right? Am I doing a wrong job? Am I doing the job with wrong tools? Should I make some changes in the tools? Am I not employing enough of my skills, whatever I have? Have I gone monotonous? Have there been the stalemaents in my procedures? Or is it only because of fate that I don't have success in my life? So this is the success mantra we can derive from Gita. Gita talks about many things. Gita talks about that a person has a prakriti. When we say prakriti, prakriti is such a word in almost all the languages of this world. This prakriti has the same word used for outer and inner. For example, this Sanskrit, and out of Sanskrit in all Indian languages we call it prakriti. So bahya prakriti, that is the 5 elements, and manushya ki prakriti, antah prakriti, the same word is used. In English it is nature, so the outer nature or the human nature. In Urdu it is kudrat, the bahya or andar ki. So we don't have any segregation of those elements which have coined us. So Gita says that each person has its own prakriti, and this prakriti is formed by the food a person eats. If you want to change the prakriti of a person, you have to change the food. It is as simple or as difficult. If you can change the food habits of a person, you can actually change the prakriti of the person. That shows the basic elements. If we have some, the Ayurveda deals with this in correcting on bringing the harmony in the body, or harmonizing everything in our body. When some ailment comes, or we are not well, then Ayurveda tries to balance it by the oblique tattva, oblique element. So scriptures actually talk about those illness which are not only human, because human or a man is not an island. A man is a social animal. When we say this, it means it is connected with the universe. Not only with the earth or earthen things, not only with the local society or local city or nation, but it's a cosmos. So this cosmic bonding must have a wider reason to reach out. Charak Samhita says there are 5 types of illness, and then Charak Samhita also gives the remedies of 5 types of illness. Now all illness, each type of illness cannot be just physical. The illness has to be somewhere, mental, what we call it, the illness of thought. हम कहते हैं विचार दूषित हो गए हैं. Then there is some illness of the body, illness of heart. When we say illness of heart, that means भाव दूषित हो गए हैं. हम झूठ बोल जाते हैं, जो हमें कहना है वो नहीं कह पाते. We misrepresent our feelings, we fake out our feelings. Then the speech we use is also an illness, because much of the conflict happens because of the speech only. If we can correct the speech, many things can be solved out. And the 5th type of illness, Charak says, is ignorance, agyan. Then he gives the remedies of it. So in Charak Samhita, they say if someone has the illness of mind, when we say mind, we mean thought. So if the thoughts are not correct, how to correct the thoughts? And he says, go into darshan. There is no synonym of darshan into English, so I am not saying discourses or dialogue or something. Darshan is something when you reach out outwardly, but your aim and destination is the inward senses. So when you reach out to the inner part of someone, you enter into a discourse or dialogue. That is what Charak says, Vad, Vivad, Samvad. When we say samvad, sam means equal. When we come to the equal page after vad and vivad, we have to come down to the equal page of samvad. But if we look at the stage of today's environment, then from vad, vivad, samvad, we have come down to atankvad. Now, atankvad is something when our five senses stop acting and our other indriya, karmendriya, that is our hands and legs start working. As human, we have to use minimum the karmendriya and we have to use maximum the jnanendriya. Jnanendriya are those five indriya which can just perceive and observe and act, but you don't have to use your hands every time. But atankvad is something when you actually don't use your jnanendriya and you use your karmendriya. So the first thing is विचारों का दूषण होना, and Charak Samhita says if darshan is applied, you can correct the diseased mind. But today, this remedy itself has gone diseased, so we don't enter into dialogue, we enter into argument. Abhay Singh ji rightly said, we don't listen to hear, we listen to react. So our reactions are pre-decided, biased, already confirmed that this reaction would come. So we have become very predictable. That is what Charak Samhita says, that hold on, you have to correct your mind with samvad. You have to reach to the stage of samvad. The second type of illness is this illness of heart. Heart is the bhav, the feelings, and many times it happens we dislike a person, but when the person is just before our eyes, we just exclaim, oh my God, how many days, oh it's so nice to look at you, so nice to meet you. But in our own hearts, we burn our own selves. We know it's fake, we know it's not true. So how to correct it? And Charak Samhita says, go to Sahitya. And Sahitya doesn't mean opening a book and reading it, because we didn't have a legacy of written Sahitya at all. Sahitya means Pathan, Manan, Vachan, Lekhan, Chintan. It is a composite activity. If we don't do that, it won't correct our feelings, because we get the precepts in the Sahitya. Sahitya only tell us, in this situation, do we need extra courage to tell the truth? Do we have that conviction to hear our own heart? Because we just silent our hearts. We don't listen to our heart at all. We just listen to the society and its own pressures. Now, this Sahitya itself has gone into the diseased situation now. If we look at all around us, what type of Sahitya is written, because now very little oral Sahitya is used. It is most of the time the written Sahitya. Now the written Sahitya are written normally under the pressure of publisher, under the pressures of awards, under the pressures of board of studies, the pressures of society and community, and to represent communities. So the lobbies are working in the creation of Sahitya. That is why it also is designed. It doesn't come right from the heart. It doesn't tell the truth of the heart. Now the third type of illness Charak says is illness of the body. That is the ailment, and we know how corona is engrossing the whole world. This is the major illness. So to correct the illness, he says you have to correct all the five senses. You have to bring in the five elements. You have to bring the balances into the elements by oblique applications of the eatables or everything. But today, if we look at the medical sciences, if you go there to get treated, we come back with more infections. So each illness becomes epidemic. So our treatment system has also gone faulty. The fourth illness he talks about the speech. Speech is something which can actually soothe out, which can actually crease out everything. If we use the speech very, very carefully And to treat the speech nicely, Charak Samhita says that you basically use grammaturgy. What is grammaturgy? Like you own up to the last meaning of the word. Don't leave the space saying मेरा ये मतलब नहीं था, तुम हमेशा गलत समझते हो. Well, these are not the way to resolve the situations or to soothe anyone or even to convey ourselves to someone else. That is why he says grammaturgy. I am reminded of one शेर here, बशीर बद्र जी का शेर है. मैं चुप रहा तो उनकी बदगुमानियाँ बढ़ती गई, वो भी सुना उसने जो मैंने कहा नहीं. So to correct this speech is very important. But today we know how the speech has gone. You know, Ghalib had to write, हर बात पे कहते हो कि तू क्या है, तुम ही कहो कि ये अंदाज़े गुफ्तगू क्या है. In each thing we abuse, we blame, we shift the onus of the wrongs and the mistakes on others, and the speech has become very apparent of attacking the soul of the other person. And the fifth illness, Charak says, and imagine Charak Samhita is a medical book, and in Charak Samhita, Rishi Charak says the fifth type of illness is Agyan, ignorance. And the remedy Charak Samhita gives to treat Agyan is Natya. He says just show them. Don't teach people the formula. Don't give them the written pamphlet. It won't serve. The only thing which would treat or would make people knowledgeable is Natya. And that is the reason we have so big market of the movies and TV serials and these theatre, Ram Leela, Krishna Leela, Nukkad Natak, even the Katha Vachak, they use all these Natya into their Katha. This is the reason, because it catches the psyche, that if they can do, why not we? It's the best way to make people knowledgeable. So Charak Samhita has these 5 types of illness, but if we go towards today's Natya, then we know what the TV serials are catering to us, what the movies are catering to us. So basically our remedies have gone to such a state that we have to go back to Charak Samhita to find out how the remedies can be corrected, or if this is the ailment, then what should be the remedy. Now another thing, we are basically involved in our education system. Everything we look towards, in the hierarchy, and whatever comes from the top, we think it comes from the West, because we don't have anything of our own selves. So how can we develop certain things without thinking that West actually started living after 13th century. Before that, there were the Dark Ages, there were the Medieval Ages, and by the time 13th century was over in India, we were actually entering into the Mughal period. So before that, we had such a big legacy. Why I have to say this? I'm talking about the semester system. We think semester system is a gift from the West, and semester system has basically 3 components. One is the classroom teaching, the another is the assignment which the student does himself, herself, and the third is the project which the group of students do together. In 1857, in India, 3 major colleges were opened. They were called Presidency colleges, one in Calcutta, one in Madras, one in Bombay. These were designed after University of London. In 1857, India gets 3 colleges, and in 1858, the London University was closed down for 3 years. And the reason they gave was that this is not good. This is not going to do good for our generation. This mode of education is no good to teach or to make them learn. After 3 years, when the London University was reopened, you can still see in the preamble of the university, it started on that module on that shloka which was written on the library of Takshila. The name of the library was Sagar Ratna, and the shloka was Acharyat Padam Adatte Padam Shishya Swamedhaya Padam Sah Brahmacharibhyah Padam Kal Kramen Cha. What does it mean? It says Acharyat Padam Adatte. Some portion of knowledge teacher will give directly. Padam Shishya Swamedhaya. And some portion of the knowledge the student will acclaim, what we call assignment, with our own efforts. Padam Saha Brahmacharibhyah. And portion of the knowledge the student would learn in the peer group with the classmates. Saha Brahmacharibhyah. Padam Kal Kramen Cha. And rest the life would teach. Now, in 1857, we had opened 3 colleges. Today, all the colleges have become universities. India has about 900 universities, 40,000 colleges. I'm sorry to say we are still working on the same fashion of 1857 University of London model, while University of London, after 3 years when it reopened, started working on Takshila model. And today, when that semester system comes back to us, we say it is the Western system, because we have never bothered to go to the scriptures and find out what was Takshila doing, what was Nalanda doing. They were 29 universities. If my college today is about 80 years old, I claim, oh, it's a very old college. But do we know what was the length of these universities? Some of the universities ran for 1600 years. Out of these 29 universities, none of them ran for less than 800 years. That was the legacy of the universities. But we are scared to reach out to their knowledge systems, and we are scared to shout at the top of our mouth saying, we are the people who taught the West. We are the people who gave the term Kulpati to West, that is the Vice Chancellor, because that happens for the first time in Mahabharata in the story of Shakuntala and Dushyant. And that Kulpati is still prevalent in our system. We are the people who gave the first convocation speech, which is written in Taittiriya Upanishad, and it's a beautiful, very short convocation speech which says Acharya Devo Bhav, Matri Devo Bhav, Pitri Devo Bhav, Atithi Devo Bhav. Treat all these 4 as gods. Then the teacher says, now you are leaving out my campus. When you leave, because you were here with me for so many years, so now you are acquainted with my strength and my weaknesses. Can I request you, leave my weaknesses here in this campus, take away my strength with you, and don't think I was the last teacher to teach you, because you will get many more in the society. Keep learning, never stop learning. This was the convocation speech. Don't we repeat this again and again and again in all these 900 universities each year? So scriptures are those management systems where we don't have to argue for the pramanas. I give you 2 very controversial questions and the reasons behind it. I take up Mahabharata here. There are 2 characters. One is Kunti and another is Draupadi. The question with Kunti comes is, how come Pandu Putra become Pandu Putra? They were not Pandu's Putra. They were the Putras of different gods. And this is a very, very common question whenever I take up a discourse of decoding Mahabharata. The reason is, today, suppose there is a diya in our house and we have to take the arti, or if we have to take our hands closer to diya, still there is a distance between diya and hand, because if we go nearer, we start burning ourselves. Now, Kunti, in entire history of civilization, is the only lady who can tolerate, bear, absorb this energy of the planets, of different planets. She was born with that boon that she can absorb the energy of the planet. Now, our problem is we depend too much on the Western scientific systems, which says anything which we can see by the eyes is science. But here it goes beyond that. Out of 5 elements, we as human body are earth. Prithivya Putro Aham, Rigved says. We are earth. So anything that is born on earth is out of body, yoni janit, biological birth. But that doesn't mean the other 4 elements cannot give birth to by any other means. So Kunti had that urja to absorb the energy of the planets, and through that there is no physical physical proximity to give birth. There was no need. I'm not talking of Satyavati. There was a need and there was a system. If the king remains without any heir, then the daughter-in-law was sent to the rishi. That is still there. I'm not arguing on that. We are talking only about Kunti. She was the only queen or the lady who was born with this urja, extra urja, who can absorb these planetary energies. And that's why she could absorb the energy of sun, the energy of Indra, the energy of Dharmadev with the consent of her husband. And the same energy she shares with Madhuri, and then Nakul and Sahadev are born. So we have the concept of Vayuputra, Yagyaputra, Agniputra, Suryaputra. These are not hearsay. The science today has gone only up to cloning or only up to test tube babies. I can, after reading so much of Mahabharata, tell you that anything which is there in Mahabharata is science. I'll give you another example. We have now a latest research which says that the sound in the atmosphere never dies out. And now we have certain methods through which we can collect back these sounds and we can actually bring them into the physical form of those words. We already call them akshar, a char which cannot die. We call them akshar already. So there has to be some science. But in Mahabharata, at the end in Shanti Parv, when Bhishma was about to depart from the earth and Krishna goes there to make the moksha possible for Bhishma Pitamaha, Bhishma Pitamaha narrated 1,000 names of Mahavishnu to Krishna. Now, after these thousands names were over, everyone realized that no one has recorded that. And they were now in a flux. They said, oh, we could have recorded these 1,000 names. So Sahadev, because he had that power of extra sensitivity, he was called, and Sahadev collected all those names from the atmosphere, and that is how he gave all those things to Vyas. And when Vyas wrote those 1,000 names, this is how Vishnu Sahasranam is written. You can read in Mahabharata, that is there in Shanti Parv. Now what Mahabharata was telling at that time, that we can recollect the sound from the atmosphere and then Vishnu Sahasranam is written. Today's science, when a German scientist says the same thing, we say, oh, science has advanced so much, we can now recollect the word and can give them the physical form of words. But we are already talking them. We already have them in the scriptures. Many a times I feel, what was the reason that Kauravas lost the war? Because Kauravas, they were 100 in numbers. They were the ruling kings. They were in the power. They were never ever for a single day in the forest. They had resources, they had friends, they had powerful allies. They were doing Digvijay. They have all the gurus, Kripacharya, Dronacharya, Bhishma Pitama. Everything was with them. And for 13 years, if one party is out of power, who remembers them? Pandavas, just 5 persons, and the mother, they were in the forest, they were not doing anything, they had no resources, they were simply collecting the arms, but they were not practicing. They were not in practice of war, they were not using their shastras, they were out of practice, they were out of strategies. They had no ally, they had no resources. Why should they win? Kauravas had 11 Akshauhini Sena, Pandavas had just 7 Akshauhini Sena. What was this cause? Come back to Kunti. Kunti was the queen of Pandu. Pandu was a Digvijay Raja. He won over the earth like that. And when she realized after few years of reign that they are hairless, they don't have any son to look after Kuru Vansh, she asked Pandu to leave everything there at Hastinapur and go to the forest so that they can bear children. Now Kunti was so smart that the kingdom was not given to Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra never became a king. He always remained a caretaker. And Kunti just gave the charge to Dhritarashtra and they left for the forest. Now here just one caveat, because many people say that Duryodhan was the son of the king, so he should have become the king. But Dhritarashtra was never ever a king. He was just a caretaker of the king. Now when they went to the forest, these 5 children are born. They come back after Pandu dies and Madhuri becomes Sati. Kunti comes back. Right from the childhood of the sons, Kunti realized that everyone is after the life of Panduputra. So when they went to the jungles, and when Arjuna suddenly won over Panchali, when he won the Swayamvar and came back, I am talking of another allegation that people say why she divided Draupadi into 5 children. See the strategic queen behind it. She knew that if she allows only Arjuna to marry Draupadi, people are after their life. They have been attacking them here and there. Lakshagra happened, Jayadratha happened, the Asur and Devata Yudh happened where Arjun had to go. So many things were happening. She knew if she allows only Arjuna to marry Panchali, then Panchal Naresh, which was the second number of powerful estate after Kuruvansh, would be alive only till Arjuna is alive. So very strategically she asked all the 5 sons to marry Draupadi. So even if 1 or 2 or 3 are killed, Panchal never goes off. Not only this, when they come back, when they had this Indraprastha, Kunti never ever, even for a single day, went to Indraprastha. She remained in Hastinapur. She never went to be with her sons who were reigning over there for 18 next years before the war. She never left Hastinapur. She was the queen of Hastinapur. Now scriptures tell us the practical wisdom. We have to decode them. This whole sense of cursory meaning out of it, when we hear, we feel very, very subjugated. We feel, we fill ourselves with inferiority complexes. We start putting questions out of it. But then why don't we decode ourselves? Why don't we lay down the whole blueprint and then start thinking the pattern of each character, why she is behaving? What was the reason of this behavior, by the way? So Kunti that way is a very, very strategic queen who knew that she cannot leave the kingdom in those hands, because that was adharma. This whole Kurukshetra was not the war of 2 brothers or 2 sets of brothers for the throne. It was always the war of dharma. Never ever Krishna took side of Pandavas just because it was a family war and he wanted Pandavas to rule over. He wanted dharma to settle down. If you read Gita, in the beginning of Gita till 24th shloka, there was no mention of any, we say, moh in Arjuna. Arjuna was not moh ridden till 24th shloka. In 24th shloka, when Arjuna says that Krishna, let me go and see who are all fighting, because till late night they were having new allies and people were taking sides, and it was after all war of the earth, Mahabharat. So Krishna took the chariot between the 2 armies, and there when Krishna started saying, look at this, this is this king, this is this king, this is this king, and when it came down to Kaurva, in 25th shloka, Krishna intentionally says to Arjun, and look here Arjun, these are your Kauravas. ये तुम्हारे कौरव हैं. The moment Arjun hears this, mere Kaurav, that is the moment that the moh is incited, and there was a reason for Krishna to do this, because it was meant to be a dharma yuddha. Krishna never wanted a Mahabharat where 6.6 crores people died in 18 days. That was the massive destruction of Mahabharata. So we need to understand these strategic positioning. Coming to Ramayana, in Ramayana we say Lakshman Rekha is for Sita. Well, Lakshman Rekha, if it is for Sita, how come Sita came out of Lakshman Rekha? It stopped Ravana. Have we ever decoded that what was the quality of that Lakshman Rekha? Because even today if we put the CCTV, it shows us what is the person outwardly, how it looks like. But that Lakshman Rekha, when Ravana came there in Sadhu Vesh, he was not like Ravan, he came like a Sadhu. Even at that time, the Lakshman Rekha is stopped. That means there was a censor which could actually judge the intentions also, and the intentions, if it doesn't match with the purpose, it would stop it here. Can we build up a security systems like that around us? Don't we need those sensors which would actually decode the feelings also or the thoughts also? But it is there in our scriptures. We don't want to decode them. There are so many things which we should have decoded one after the other. It's one more shloka I would decode, and I think that it's about to be the time. I'll ask the organizers. We talk about research methodology, and this is a very big blame on us, telling us that we don't have any methodology, so we have to follow either APA style or MLA style sheet. Because we were never the researchers, we had no research done, we had no procedures, we had no documentations of research. And whenever I hear this, I feel extremely angry on these statements. First of all, I am just reciting a shloka, or actually I should show you this screen only. So if you want to take a shot of it, you can just take 1 second. So this is a shloka which is entire research methodology inside it. It says upkramo upsangharo abhyaso purvata phalam arthvadopapatti cha lingam tatparya nirnay. What does it say? It says abhyaso upkramo, that is a beginning and an end. It must have a beginning and it must have an end. Then tatparya nirnay. I'll just put the shloka once more so that if someone wants to take this shot, they can take. Upakramo upsangharo abhyaso apurvata phalam arthvadopapatti cha lingam tatparya nirnay. Now see, arambh and ant, then tatparya nirnay. What we say, the need analysis. Then abhyas and punarukti, like repetition. When we say abhyas, it is the literature review. You need to find out the research gaps out of, and then punarukti. Punarukti is citations and references. You collect other scholars, other thinkers, other material, and then you prove your point. Then apurvata, that is the newness. What is the research quantum here? Then the phal is the results. Then Arthvad is cross-examining, analysis. What we say, the data analysis. And then Utpatti, that is the Utpatti is the no deviation from the objective. That means that we need to understand that, sorry, I need to stop sharing. Yeah. This means that you have a total procedure written about the research methodology. How it is implemented? I give you just two or maybe three examples very quickly. One is Arthashastra, Kautilya's Arthashastra. If we read only first two chapters of Kautilya Arthashastra, he actually makes a list of all those scholars whom he is quoting. He says on taxation, Ravan Samhita says this, but I say this. Shukraniti Sar says this, but I say this. No, all other like that. He quotes 27 scriptures or the Vidwan, and then says, okay, this reference is found in that also, but I am saying this. Isn't it literature review? It is not citation. Is it not referencing? Then second one is second example comes from 14th century. It's a Telugu Ramayana written by Sri Molla. Now this girl was an ashram dasi. After hearing many rishis and munis, one day she thinks I should also write a Ramayana, and she gives a beautiful reason. She says, जैसे एक वैश्या ने एक तोता पाल लिया और उस तोते का नाम राम रख दिया, मैं सुबह से रात तक बस उस तोते को ही बुलाती रहती हूँ और उसका उद्धार हो जाता है. मैं इसी फीलिंग से ये रामायण लिखना चाहती हूँ. बट देन इन द बिगिनिंग ऑफ द रामायण शी सेज टू थिंग्स. वन थिंग इज शी सेज, मैं वाल्मीकि की तरह सुर सुन्नत नहीं हूँ, मैं कालिदास की तरह रसों से भरपूर नहीं हूँ. इन दिस lineage she gives around 11 or 12 names, and with adjectives. What were the qualities of those authors that she says? Number one, in that line, Tulsidas is not written. That means तुलसीदास से पहले लिखी गई रामायण है, तब तक तुलसीदास नहीं हुए. So it gives us the dating also. Second thing she says, a very beautiful paragraph she writes and says, मुझे प्रबंध नीति नहीं आती, अलंकार नहीं आते, संधि नहीं आती, प्रभास नहीं आती. She gives 32 items to tell us what she doesn't know, and it's amazing. Like, you can actually test on the quality of a text. You can go and make them the yardsticks when we do all these what we say analysis or observations or examinations or evaluations. These are the yardstick. And the third example I would give of Tulsidas ji, he talks in Ramayana, Nana Itihas Purana Adi. What does it mean? It means he has actually gone through everything. He has read them out, and then he says, मैं कुछ नया नहीं कह रहा हूँ, हर इतिहास पुराण में मुझसे पहले जो कुछ कहा गया मैं फिर से वही कहता हूँ. Isn't it literature review? So our tradition is application mode. We don't create theories and then put the things on the theory and then put the research in a bound material and give a number and pack them up in the library cupboards. Our research is, I give you two suktas. One is Ano Bhadra Krito Yantu Vishwataha. Anything that is good in this world should come to me. Good thoughts, everything good. But then what do we do when we have taken everything to us? Do we become the capitalist? Do we just own that? Do we go for patenting? No. Our next sutra says, A Vadani Janebhya. Whatever I have is for the world. It must be for the benefit of the world, for the good welfare of the world. Can you ever imagine why in Gita Krishna says, Vriksho mein main people hu? There were no biological tools. There were no zoological tools. How did he know that people is a vriksh which emanates 24 hours of oxygen? It should not be cut. This is the scientific reason. There are so many other scientific, if you read just first two chapters of Gita, it looks as if some sonography machine is put before the eyes. Because Krishna tells to Arjun कि अर्जुन तुम्हारा मन इस समय ऐसे धुएं में लिप्त हो गया है जैसे गर्भ में बच्चा झिल्ली में लिपटा होता है. Now that we can see only in a sonography machine. How did Krishna know कि गर्भ का बच्चा कैसे झिल्ली में लिपटा हुआ है? We actually don't go with those approaches to the scriptures which tell us immensely how important they are. There's so many other things which are so scientific because हमारे यहाँ जो रिसर्च होती थी वो लैब्स में नहीं होती थी. हमारी लैब्स जंगल में, आश्रम में, गुरुकुल में, ऋषियों के पास, जिन्हें हम ऋषि और संत कहते हैं, वही हमारे साइंटिस्ट थे। उन्होंने ही, साइंटिस्ट ने ये पहचाना कि जहाँ भी जल बॉडी देखिए वहाँ सिक्का डाल दीजिए, क्योंकि सिक्का सोना, चांदी या तांबे का बनता है। किसी लैब में, किसी आश्रम में, किसी गुरुकुल में मेटलर्जी पे रिसर्च हो रही होगी, और मेटल्स पे रिसर्च करते करते पता चला कि सोने, चांदी और तांबे में वाटर क्लीनिंग ऑब्जेक्ट्स होते हैं। तो हम इकोलॉजी से इतना पानी लेते हैं, तो इतने पानी को शुद्ध करने की भी हमारी ड्यूटी है। इसलिए हम जहाँ भी वाटर बॉडी देखें अपना सिक्का डाल दें। आज के सिक्के डालने से कुछ नहीं होगा। आज भी हम डालें तो तांबे के पीसेस अपने पास रखें, वो डालें, क्योंकि सोना चांदी नहीं डाल सकते। बट देन we have to trust the knowledge which has come in the formal and informal manner, because our whole tradition is very scientific. We live in an inbuilt scientific tradition. And near the full moon day we do nirjal upvas. Why? Because it's the same percentage of water in our body which percentage the earth has with the ocean. And when the moon comes very nearer to the earth, it actually attracts and the water level raises. So like there is a rise of water level in the oceans, similarly our body water level also rises. We don't need extra water that day. So we go for Nirjal Upvas. With the last example, I will end my lecture here and would invite question. We do Navratri. हमारे यहाँ साल में 2 बार नवरात्रि आती है, 4 बार आती है, 2 बार गुप्त है, मैं उसकी बात नहीं कर रही। 2 बार नवरात्रि आती है, एक बार मार्च अप्रैल में, एक बार अक्टूबर नवंबर में। हम कृषि प्रधान देश है, हमारी 2 फसलें हैं, एक रबी है, एक खरीफ है। एक फसल मार्च अप्रैल में पकती है, दूसरी बोई जाती है, और दूसरी फसल अक्टूबर नवंबर में पकती है और दूसरी बोई जाती है। हम दोनों नवरात्रियों में मिट्टी का घड़ा लेते हैं, घड़े में छेद कर देते हैं, उसमें मिट्टी भरते हैं और उसमें कुछ दाने बो देते हैं। उस दानों के घड़े के ऊपर हमें दिया जलाकर अखंड ज्योत जलाते हैं फॉर 9 days. What are we doing? Are we just doing this worship, Durga Puja? Listen what we are doing. This is indigenous soil testing system. 9 दिन में हमें ये पता चल जाता है कि इस बार धरती की उर्वरक क्षमता कितनी है, हमारा अनाज कितना उगेगा। धरती में प्रॉब्लम है, मिट्टी में प्रॉब्लम है, एंड देन वी गो एंड गिव ऑल दीज कलश टू द टेम्पल्स. टेम्पल्स इज आवर डाटा कलेक्शन सेंटर. अलग अलग क्षेत्रों से आए घड़े अलग अलग रखे जाते हैं. सो ऑटोमेटिकली दे नो इस क्षेत्र की मिट्टी इतनी उपजाऊ है, इस क्षेत्र में अकाल पड़ा है तो कम मिट्टी में पानी हुआ है. यू नो दिस इज वेरी 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 साइंटिफिक सिस्टम. क्योंकि जो दिया जला के घड़े पे रखा वो हमने आर्टिफिशियली ज़मीन के अंदर का वो टेम्परेचर क्रिएट किया पानी और आग से जिसमें बीज उगता है. Now we have to reapproach our system, embed them with our knowledge systems, because the reason of our existence for this elongated civilization is the scientificality. We must go. If we can't read them just because they are in Sanskrit, then sorry to say we read Socrates, Aristotle and Plato, even they were not in English. So go to translations. If we can't go for translations, ask someone to just give a speech and we gain the knowledge. But then please have trust. Even if कई बार मैं कहती हूँ अपने अंधविश्वास पर भी विश्वास रखिए, क्योंकि अंधविश्वास का मतलब सुपरस्टिशन नहीं है. अंधविश्वास का मतलब है इतनी बार टेस्टेड फैक्ट है कि आप अंध होकर भी विश्वास कर सकते हैं. डोंट क्रिएट synonyms. We don't need synonyms. Use the words as it is, as we are using the Latin and Greek and other Italian words while talking in English. I must thank you once more. Invite questions. Thank you so much for giving me this platform, and I'm humbled to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So may I ask you a question?
Yes.
The first question is, how can we improve our personality by adopting spiritual values in our life?
Now there are three types of personalities which our scriptures tell us: Rajasi, Tamasi and Sattvic. We have all the ingredients within us only. No one is pure Rajasi, pure Tamasi, pure Sattvic. We need to understand what is our objective and react to it, but we need to understand that control is very important. If we can control ourselves, and control can happen only with the knowledge. The more knowledgeable we are, the more modes of controlling our own selves we would learn. So we should not just react to behave someone else. We have our own minds, and those minds are trained with different knowledges. So if we have this combination, then definitely we can develop the personality, because our aim is always to become Sattvic. But if a Raja becomes Sattvic, Mahabharata talks about two Niti, Sahaj Niti and Rajniti. राजनीति इज फॉर राजा एंड सहज नीति इज फॉर घर. अगर हम उल्टा कर दें, घर में राजनीति खेलें और समाज में राजा सहज नीति खेले, तो देश का क्या हाल हो सकता है हमें पता है. सो वी मस्ट अंडरस्टैंड द एम. एवरीथिंग इज अवेलेबल, बट वी नीड टू फर्स्ट रियलाइज आवर ओन एम एंड देन क्रिएट द पर्सनैलिटीज.
Thank you, ma'am. The second question is, in current time, what is the name of that place where Lakshman Rekha drawn by Lakshman? Is there anything which shows that incident there?
Chitrakoot is the place. It happened in the Chitrakoot only. They were living in Chitrakoot, from where Sita was abducted. And if you read Valmiki Ramayana, when they are returning back from Sri Lanka to Ayodhya, it's a very clear description. They were in Pushpak Viman, and from the Pushpak Viman, Ram is showing all the places to the people who are sitting in that Viman. And then they keep on saying that, look, this is the place it happened, this is the place it happened, and there he shows Chitrakoot also. It's like a GPS system which was fit with the Pushpak Viman, because it was actually guiding those places and Ram was simply narrating those places.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am, for your spiritual words. This knowledge is very much needed nowadays. Thank you for enlightening us and expressing our rich culture and heritage in a wonderful way. Thank you, ma'am.